That's pretty funny, isn't it? I know I had to laugh. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, or is it a happy Monday? We haven't quite figured that out yet. Good morning. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Yes, I am really running late today because I slept for about an hour. I have such a hard time sleeping anyway. And then last night, why? I do not know around 11:45 p.m. Right. I mean, I was probably asleep for 5 minutes. The tornado siren went off and it would not stop. It went off for quite some time. And it's so loud. The tornado siren is in my front yard and it's so loud. And of course, to make matters even more strange, you jump up and there's police cars flying by with their lights on, which is very strange here to see multiple police cars flying by with their lights on and the tornado siren going off in the middle of the night. I'm like, are we under attack? Are there people on the loose? Like, was there a prison escape? Like, what exactly is happening? There was no storms in the area. And it's really hard to get back to sleep anyway for me. I'm one of those people, I don't know about you guys, but once I wake up, I am not going back to sleep anytime soon. It doesn't matter if I've slept for 5 minutes or 5 hours. If I'm asleep and I wake up, I'm awake. My body doesn't sleep very well anyway. So I was awake until like 4, then I woke back up at 5 trying to hurry up and get ready. So I am really really pushing my time today. Good morning, Dottie. Yes, it is just another manic Monday. Did you like that little video intro? I'm going to have to play that again. I might play that a couple times today because it's so funny and so befitting, isn't it? Let's take another look. I'm going to be posting that everywhere today. I love it. Good morning, Joe. Happy to see you this morning. I'll tell you, I hope you guys had a good weekend. It's my mom's birthday. So we celebrated her birthday a little bit. I always try to think of I like to cook. So I always try to think of everybody's, favorite foods or foods they like. And so I made cube steak, which is something I used to hate cube steak when I was a kid. And I'm still not overly fond of it now, but now I cook it a little bit different. I always felt like back in the day, which I loved my grandma's cooking, of course, but when she made cube steaks, it always felt like it was like tough and it was hard to eat. And so I just didn't like it. Now, as an adult, when I make cube steaks, of course, I sear them really well in a skillet with some onions and some mushrooms, and then I make a brown gravy, and then I let it simmer in that gravy until it becomes tender. So it's a whole different thing for me now. But again, I'm trying to stick to that anti-inflammatory diet, and so I couldn't really eat some of the things that I made, and I'm really going to stick to it too. Yesterday, I actually woke up, and for the first time, I was kind of scared to do it. I drank my lemon juice and baking soda, and what I was told to do is to juice 2 lemons. Just, I have a citrus juicer, just take the juice out of 2 lemons, add a teaspoon of baking soda, stir it up, drink it like a shot. Oh my goodness. Be forewarned if you have a stomach like mine. I really feel like my body's very acidic. We can be alkaline or you can be acidic. And if you listen to a lot of different online doctors, no real doctor I've ever had, or I should say not real doctor, but doctor I've seen in person, because the doctors I've seen in person, they don't really address these types of things. You go in, you tell them what's going on, they do their best guess, they prescribe you some medication, and you come back in so many weeks and let them know if you're better. If you're not, they just prescribe you something else. And so I'm trying to take a different approach. But yesterday, drinking that lemon juice and the baking soda, it really didn't taste bad. It goes down pretty quick. But my God, it burned a trail down my throat all the way into my stomach, and I could feel it. Seriously, I could feel it going through my intestines, burning like fire. But that's probably because I have ulcers all the way through my GI tract, and so I think it was hitting every single one. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and then my stomach swole so bad. I looked like I was having a baby, but it's all the swelling's gone today. So we'll see how it works out because I'm going to try it again today. Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Joe. and lots to talk about today besides me and my ongoing health crisis. And which what we will be talking about more because we're going to talk more about that anti-inflammatory diet. I have a nutritionist who's going to be joining us next week. We're going to talk to her about some of these different things and what you should. We all know really what we should and shouldn't be eating, but she's going to line that out a little bit better for us. Now, in the meantime, there is a lot going on today. A lot going on. I felt like this on Friday. I feel like it again today, where there's really more news stories than we'll ever have time to talk about. It could be like a 24/7 ticker, going on today with the news. Most importantly, gosh, I don't know which one is most important. I don't even know. They're all important. Obviously, Zelensky in Washington, D.C. already. Donald Trump told him he has to wear a suit. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I can't wait to see him in his suit, or will he refuse to wear a suit? Of course, BlackRock's Larry Fink taking over the WEF, the World Economic Forum. No surprise there, but Donald Trump, he's got an answer. We're going to get into that. So many things again to talk about. Good morning, Linda. Before we get too far, I want to talk about that accident that took place yesterday, or I don't think it was yesterday, it was a couple days ago in Florida. You've all seen it. You all know this story in which there was a tractor trailer that did a U-turn. Two guys driving it that did a U-turn in the middle of the highway. You know how you're driving down the highway and you see that little area in the middle where you can turn around, but you know you cannot turn around because it's like authorized vehicles only. If you're driving in my area, every single one of those has 1 to 2 state troopers parked in it. And that is just a no-go zone. You don't turn around. Yet here we have an 18-wheeler who decided it would be a great idea with no notice at all to just turn around and make a U-turn there. And of course, there was a vehicle behind them that tried to stop, could not stop, went straight underneath the truck. It's heartbreaking video. 3 lives lost. And then we find out the driver is illegal. He's here illegally, and he obtained his CDL license in California. He's not even here legally. How can that surprise us anymore? We've talked about this how many times? People in our country who are here illegally, who have CDLs to drive, and how the highways have become so much more dangerous because we have a lot of people on our highways, not only that really should not have a CDL license, who legally have no right to have one, but also a lot of times they can't read the signage. They don't read or speak English. Now, we know the Trump administration is trying to cut down on these CDLs being given out to truck drivers. A lot of truck drivers lost their jobs recently. Over 200,000, truck drivers have lost their jobs, and a lot of truck drivers who do not speak English should have also lost their jobs. That is a plan of the Trump administration. Jay says, I hope the company is sued out of business. I agree, Jay, because I would think whoever it is, but are they owner operators? Do they work for a company now? I don't know, but either way, yes, somebody needs to be held responsible. We're going to talk about that because there is some justice being served. Pam says, "Can you believe Daddy Trump had to tell him to wear a suit?" I know, Pam, and trust me, we're going to be talking a lot about that because we'll get to it in a minute because there is a lot to talk about. All right, I'm going to play this quick video for you. It's like 28 seconds long. I'll probably play it twice just so you can take a good look if you haven't already seen it. All right, well, I'm going to try to play it. If I can keep my hair out of my eyes so I can see. Let's see. Now, there's no sound. This guy, look at him looking. He does not care at all. Does not care at all. I'm going to play it one more time. Here's these two guys. You can see them here. Just sitting there now. The guy in the passenger seat, I have no idea what he's doing. He doesn't even seem like I guess he's on his phone. He doesn't understand. Here we go. This guy, see, I mean, did you see his face? It was just like nothing happened. He doesn't care. Does not care at all. No emotion. He stops. He's like, "Oh, what just happened?" There he is. I would be bawling on the side of the road if I was involved in this accident. It's just unbelievable. Makes me sick. Jay says, I can't even get a job without filling out an I-9 form proving my citizenship. You're right, Jay. You know what? I hire a lot of people. I hire a lot of people. And guess what? They all have to fill out an I-9 form. Guess what they have to do as part of that I-9 form? They have to give me two forms of identification, two forms. And their identification has to show me that they are authorized to work in the United States, that they are a citizen of the United States, or that they are here legally and authorized to work. Not illegal. This guy came across our southern border illegally. Yes, Lori, three people lost their lives. I believe the driver was a 30-year-old man from Florida City. I believe there was a woman who was 37 from Pompano Beach. There was another, I think it was a man that was 54 years old, also in the vehicle. All three lost their lives in this accident. Now, this guy's name is Harjinder Singh. He's been charged with 3 counts of vehicular homicide. Now, he got his, of course, his CDL in California. No surprise there whatsoever. And it really is. It's absolutely unbelievable, and I hope he spends every last minute in jail. But that's not going to happen, is it? We already know that's not going to happen. You know, he'll probably now in Florida, of course, they're going to hit him a lot harder than had this happened in a couple of other states, particularly in California. However, most likely he'll probably be deported, and when they deport him back to India or wherever they decide now we deport people to third party countries. Wherever he goes, they'll probably release him. Who knows? People just do not pay the justice we all expect them to receive. But when I saw that, I thought, man, just the look on his face, like it's just like whatever, doesn't care. It's crazy. And I'm not going to say he doesn't care. I don't know this man. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what it's in his heart, but he sure didn't look very distraught now, did he? I mean, I don't know what to think about it, but it's a very bad, ugly, ugly situation going on there. So let's jump into what's going on today in Washington D.C. A lot of different things going on in Washington D.C. Good morning, Karen. One of those things, and you may have seen this already, that the U.S. Marshal Service has taken control over Washington D.C. And I think that that is absolutely fantastic. A really good friend of mine I've known for many many years is a regional, well, he used to be the regional director of the US Marshal Service. Now I'm not sure what he does now. I know his title has changed. And I will tell you from day one, the US Marshal Service always, always, always did a great service to this country. They are Trump folks, no question about it. They want law, maybe not all of them, but they want law and order. And it's probably the one branch that was never, never, never infiltrated by the lunatics with the TDS. So I am thrilled to death that the US Marshal Service has taken control of the law enforcement there in Washington D.C. And of course you may have also heard this, that the National Guard there in Washington D.C. has been deputized. A lot of people talking about why would they need to be deputized, and I know Colonel Joe Adams sent me a message. We're going to talk. I hope he's able to join the show one day this week, and we're going to talk about this, and he's going to explain a little bit better, hopefully to us, or maybe he'll explain it to me and I can explain it to you if he's not available to join us, a little bit more about the roles of these various organizations, law enforcement organizations within Washington D.C. But there's a lot of speculation that they're deputizing the National Guard for a reason. Now, I think that reason is so that they can actually make arrests, so that they're not just a deterrent, that there's actually something they can do to fight crime. There's already been over 300 arrests, which is amazing. Lots, of course, lots of lots of protesters out in DC. But also the flip side of that, a lot of citizens are also coming out and saying, this is great. I love it. A lot of other, I've never felt so safe in DC. Other people in other cities, I've seen video, hey, come to Chicago, come to St. Louis, We're tired of seeing our kids getting killed in the street. Come here next. I think this is going to be a snowball effect. Where will the criminals go, though? That's the question, because they're not just going to give up their life of crime. Where will they go? And Glesna, I'm not sure if I said hi to you. Good morning, Glesna, from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Beautiful place. David, good morning, David. Maybe he can take a page out of a Comey's book for peace and listen to Taylor Swift. I've got that video, David. I'm going to play that here in just a minute. Did you see the? Oh, yes, I did see it. What a loon. David, I have you read my mind. I have that video all queued up to play it today. It was going to be my intro, quite honestly. And I thought, nah, we'll play it in the show so we can talk a little bit more. That guy is absolutely crazy. He's crazy. Jay says multiple lawsuits trying to stop the DC takeover and alligator Alcatraz for civil rights violations and inhumane conditions. What about my civil rights? Nobody ever cares about our civil rights, do they? The criminals have all the protections. Us citizens, we no nobody cares about our civil rights. It's not okay. It's not okay, to arrest and house these people at Alligator Alcatraz. But it's okay for me to be fearful for my life every single day, not knowing, somebody's going to come out of the shadows and, harm me in one way or another. There are many different ways to harm someone, none of them good. And those are things that we have to worry about nonstop. But that's okay. It doesn't violate our rights. It's okay to have to live in fear. I'm tired of living in fear. I don't know about you guys. I am tired of worrying about it. And I don't even know if it's fear on my part. It's more of just waiting for something to happen and knowing I may have to react. I think is probably how some of us feel. Not as much fearful, but I do think about these things because I thought, I would really like to go out and walk around the park. There's so many beautiful parks and beautiful trails, but I'll tell you, these days you're not safe to go walk at a park or a trail unless you're armed. Why? Because there could be any number of people waiting around the next tree or bush to attack you. Not to say that those are all going to be illegals, but a lot of the cases we've heard over the past several years have been illegal. So don't think it can't happen. Good morning, Rob. And Jay, they don't remember the pictures of detention centers under Obama and then Biden. No, they don't. And there's been a lot of very tough, I mean, we have work camps in the United States. That's nothing new. Harsh conditions are nothing new. And you have to remember Alligator Alcatraz, it's just a processing center. People aren't there for very long. They come in, they're processed, they're deported. We don't keep people there for any length of time. And so I don't know what anybody's complaining about. There's a big facility similar to Alligator Alcatraz in Texas also. And, it's a processing center. You bring them in, you process them, and then off they go. That's how it works. And here's some people. I've got this little short video here, people protesting in Washington, D.C. Let's see here. I hope my video loads up. I've been having all kinds of video problems today, but we'll do our best.
Hey, sir, the road over there? Hey, let's go! Let's go!
How about you say
What a beautiful sight, right? Hopefully coming to a town near you for all of our sakes. David, DC will be a blueprint for the rest of the country, will be one of the many things Trump will be remembered for years to come. Yes, and yes. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Luckily, where I live, because I literally had to move out into the middle of nowhere to a city with a population of 7,000 people. And while we have some crime here, we've had some crazy stuff going on the past couple of days. People keep seeing these two guys out with ski masks near the local Walmart, and they've been apprehended once, and the next night they were back out in their ski masks again. But the thing is, everybody, for the most part, knows who they are. It's the difference in a small town. If somebody commits a crime, unless it's somebody who got off the freeway or coming into town, most of the time people know who it is and talk about it. In other cities, of course, you have no idea. There's thousands of crimes being committed, every single day, different types of crimes. And we have to fight crime. We just have to. I would so welcome the National Guard to come through a city like St. Louis or Chicago. But then we have to start thinking, when the crime moves, where does it go? What do you do to prevent crime? It's just going to keep continuing to spread. We saw that within St. Louis City, of course. Crime in St. Louis City, the more they fight crime in St. Louis City, it starts spreading out to the counties. They fight it in the county, it spreads out to St. Charles County, even a little bit further out. So it just continues to spread. Criminals aren't going to give up their life of crime overnight. And what about the homeless folks? We know the homeless people in Washington D.C. were relocated. They were just moved to another area. They weren't necessarily given housing or anything like that. So it's like, what do you do? Do you just at some point you just round everybody up and put them in one location? Everybody in the country that's homeless. I know that's we're going to violate their civil rights, right? And I don't know, but we're going to tackle it one issue at a time. Jay says it's better than lots of people's homes. Oh, Alligator Alcatraz, you got that right. Sherry, I'm not going to tell where you are just in case people are listening. We don't want anyone come out. But you said not a soul in sight. And be very careful out there, Sherry. Be very careful. When I was traveling back and forth to California, I was going out there, a couple days every month. And when I was there during the day, I didn't have a whole lot to do, and I was just driving from beach to beach, checking out, the coastline. And just about every beach I went to was full of homeless people, people sleeping in vans and trucks. And I can't say I ever really felt that safe. And there was one beach that I went to a lot, pretty much every time I was there, and off the Pacific Coast Highway there, near Laguna. And there was a person who worked there, like I don't know, a farm. I almost said farm, a state park worker. And I think he recognized me because I was coming there and walking, in the mornings on the trails. And he started kind of keeping an eye on me. And he's like, you really need to be careful because it's probably a little more dangerous than what you think. And I'm like, I get it. I do. I get it. And one time I fell asleep on the beach. I woke up and there was a homeless guy like sleeping about 2 feet away from me. And I'm like, where did this guy come from? And it's scary out there. It really is. It's really scary out there. And I think we've got to start doing better because our civil rights matter too. And we have the right to feel safe, don't we? We have the right to feel safe, whether we're in our own hometown or traveling. And right now, there's not a lot of places where we can and do feel safe. I know I would love to go out again and ride a bike on a trail or walk, but I will not do it unless I'm armed. It will not happen. David James, let's see. Trump said something a while back about reopening the mental health hospitals. If they start to do that, a lot of the homeless will get services they ultimately need. Much of the homeless have mental health problems. David, I talked about this last week and maybe even the week before because there is actually new legislation. I'm not sure when it exactly comes into effect. I need to look into that. Another executive order Trump has been working on and is just a matter of coming to light, in which right now, as we've said before on the show, if somebody you think is a danger to themselves, they can be committed for 72 hours, involuntarily. But otherwise, unless somebody's a danger to themselves or to other people, they are free to make their own choices. They don't have to take their medication. They don't have to have a home. They can live out on the streets. They can live homelessly. They can, even in the most severe mentally ill people, still have rights. And that is changing. And that is because I think that Donald Trump has determined and his administration has determined, as should have happened a long time ago, that some of these people, they don't have the ability to rationally think for themselves. And they're not typically the people committing the crimes, they're typically the victims of crime. So therefore, Donald Trump has new legislation in which your family member or somebody out on the street, a stranger you don't even know, can be committed to one of these mental hospitals that they're planning to reopen for an indeterminate number of amount of time until they feel that they are actually helped and can be released on their own recognizance, without relapsing. And that's something that I never thought I would see in this country because there's no money to be made off of the mentally ill. But thank God somebody in our administration, the Trump administration, is compassionate for these people who cannot help themselves. And families have no options. And I think it's just one of the best things I've heard that Donald Trump has talked about. Donna says so many homeless don't want help, wanted criminals. Some, absolutely. Kevin says more and more people are starting to live out of their car because of inflation and Biden economics. Also true, Kevin. And I talked about that last week that we're going to see a rise in the people living in their vehicles, living in parks, living in tents, a lot like what we saw in the Great Depression, because right now there are so many people. I think I read, I wish I could remember the number. Was it 6 million Americans? I think a little over 6 million Americans late on their mortgage payments right now. That was like a month ago. I think we talked about that. We're all paycheck away from living in our car, from being homeless out on the streets and, not with mental health conditions, just you just can't simply afford to live. And that's why we see more and more elderly people out on the streets because they cannot afford these crazy power bills they're getting hit with. And Ameren, of course, their idea of relief is to put $4 million into a fund, which is better than nothing. $4 million into a fund, and then these different companies who service, I think like Catholic Charities is one. There's a lot of different charities in wherever you live in which Ameren gives money to or will pay off your bill. They don't give them money, but they can submit an application on your behalf. And then Ameren, if you meet their criteria, they will donate so much of this money towards your electric power bill. And it's a tough situation. Jay says hurting. The federal chair hurts. Oh, is hurting. Yes. And they'll find a way to profit from it, probably so, probably so. But you know what? I would rather see tax dollars go to the mentally ill and the homeless than to Ukraine. Wouldn't you? I don't want to give $1 to Ukraine, and people can be upset about that. They can blast me. It's not that I don't support the Ukrainian people. It's that I don't support the puppet government that's in Ukraine. We all know Zelensky is a puppet, and I'm going to remind you of that here again by playing this little video. I mean, come on now. how 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 accurate is that? Jay says, is it I don't know if that's it's ILHEAP is very hard to qualify for. I'm assuming that's some type of service that allows the Ameren to pay your utility bill. If so, yes, those programs are very hard to qualify for. You have to have literally nothing and be on the verge of homelessness before they'll actually give some money to your power bill, or illegal. Of course, if you're here illegally, they'll be more than happy to fork over that money to help you pay your power bill. But if you're a citizen of the United States, good luck to you in getting some of that $4 million from Ameren. Good luck to you. But again, and Kevin's always replying, and Gavin Newsom is a classic example. He steals all the money, and the homeless get nothing. Kevin, we're going to talk about that too, because I read an interesting article. We'll talk about it tomorrow when I have a little bit more time to research it. And I don't want to get in trouble by saying the wrong thing, so I'm going to be very careful here. But speaking of Governor Newsom and what's happening in California, is I read the other day. Remember how these celebrities and all these people got together and they donated, all of this money. This fund had several $1 million that were added to it. And this was for the fire victims of the Santa Monica Malibu fires. And what ended up happening is allegedly that money was given to an NGO, non-government organization belonging to George Clooney, and not one penny allegedly went to any of those people who lost their homes or were displaced because of the fires. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. I don't have all of the details to go over it today, and I want to be very careful talking about that and what exactly happened there and where that money is. But yeah, you can't trust where your tax dollars are going. And I know, again, I don't want one penny going to Ukraine. I don't know if you guys saw the news over the weekend where we learned that Congress passed some type of injunction to where we can't even audit the money that goes to Ukraine. There is no legal way to audit it. The money that goes over there, we'll never know where it went or how it was distributed. And I can guarantee you one thing. There was fire aid. Thank you for that, Kevin. Fire aid. I can guarantee you one thing. This guy, I'll bet you, and this is just my opinion, that this guy is getting some kickbacks from that money that we can't audit.
And my advice to President Trump and Marco is if you got to convince Putin that if this war doesn't end justly and honorably, with Ukraine making concessions also, we're going to destroy the Russian economy. We have the ability to do it.
What a warmonger. What a warmonger. We all know Lindsey Graham is not one of us. And there's nothing that gets him more fired up than talking about Ukraine and Russia, right? There is nothing that gets him more fired up. I've been making a lot of posts on social media that have been met with a lot of back and forth with what do we do? Do we side with Russia? Do we side with BRICS? Do we side with Europe? I'll say it again, I'll say it 1,000 times. Europe is not our friend. The European Union, absolutely not our friend. Mark Rutte of NATO, not our friend. Ursula von Leyen of the European Union, not our friend. These people hate Donald Trump. They did everything they could to try to make sure he did not get elected. And they are definitely embroiled in the whole Russiagate hoax, no question about it. These people are not our friends. And I can only think that Donald Trump is saddling up to them and befriending them for a greater purpose. And we're starting to kind of find out what that greater purpose is. He wants to create peace between Ukraine and Russia, not just for the Nobel Peace Prize, which I do think motivates him in many instances. But in this case, it's something much bigger than that we've talked about already, is that Russia and several businessmen, remember when Putin landed in Alaska on his plane, there were over 100 Russian businessmen that also came with him, that accompanied him. And these businessmen, they want to invest in America infrastructure. They want to work with us, not against us. And we can't say that, can we, about Europe? What European countries really invest in the United States? I would say none. Saudi Arabia, of course, invests with us extensively. And good morning, Robert. And Jay says, I don't see Putin or Zelensky coming to an agreement. Jay says, lined a lot of pockets. The money going to Ukraine definitely lined a lot of pockets. And I would say Graham was probably out there with his hand out for sure. And Jay says the EU thankfully doesn't represent what most Europeans think. I don't know about that, Jay. I'm not sure if I can agree with you on that one. And Rich, what is Europe going to do without us? Collapse. They're already on the brink of collapse. And Robert, if we were smart, we would float the idea of dumping NATO and join BRICS. Robert, you and I can agree on that, but most people will not agree with us. And I honestly don't think most people. Well, let me backtrack. I know that people are very intelligent when it comes to what's going on with BRICS, what's going on with NATO, and the difference between the two. I think most of us can agree that we wish that Donald Trump would withdraw from NATO. I think most of us agree that NATO is not our friend. They're not our ally. They do not like us. And Jay, back to your point, about Europeans, yes, probably most Europeans, I think anyway, hate what's happening in their country. But I'll tell you what, since I've been making these posts, go over to Threads. There's a social media site called Threads. I'm not sure if any of you have been over there, but that's where I do a lot of my trolling. I try to behave myself on Facebook, or on X, but over on Threads, boy, there's no holding back. And over there on Threads, you wouldn't believe how many Europeans, hundreds of them or more, attack me for talking about Europe and how Europe doesn't like the United States, the European leaders. And these people are all for one world government. They hate Donald Trump. These people hate Donald Trump, and they don't care that their country's being taken over. They say it's all lies and manipulation, that none of it's true, and that they love their country and they love their leaders. And, we see people obviously out in mass protesting against what their country is doing. And I certainly feel for those people. Many people just in the past couple of weeks being taken in, prosecuted for social media posts against all of these illegals coming into their country and taking over. And it's a tough situation. Jay, Russia economy is getting worse. But Jay, the ruble is up, 53.5% against the US dollar. And they're fighting inflation, but guess what? Their inflation just went down twice. I would have to say that the Russian economy is doing pretty darn good. And they don't care about sanctions. Everybody wants to threaten sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. We're going to put sanctions against Russia. Russia does not care about sanctions. They do not care about the United States. Their inflation started at, I think it was around 18 to 20%. And or no, let me think about that. It was up much higher than that. Then it went down to 18%. And it continues to drop. It's higher than our inflation rate here. But considering where it started and where it is now, the ruble, where it started, where it is now, Putin, of course, backing the ruble in gold, those things have really helped the Russian economy. I think they're doing pretty darn good over there. And Kevin says NATO is nothing but globalists who want one world government. BRICS is not. Exactly, Kevin. That is absolutely correct. And we've got a couple of choices. And Dottie says, oh, well, sorry, Dottie, let me run back up here to see your comments because I thought it was good. Let me go back up. Let's see here. Dottie, Russia has been doing what we need to do, make and grow your own stuff, be self-sufficient. You got that right. And Jay says, I don't think we need NATO or BRICS. Well, I mean, that's open to interpretation. And Jay says lots of foreign bots in the social media world. Yes, and lots of real idiot people too in the social media world. Jay says if India stops buying Russian oil, it would hurt. That's not going to happen though. India is part of BRICS. They're not going to go against Russia. They have formed an alliance with BRICS, and that's getting ready to even change. I read the figures of BRICS a week or so ago. They are neck and neck with NATO, as far as GDP, the world's population, and Venezuela getting ready to soon join BRICS. And when it does, that's going to push them over the edge because, of course, Venezuela has a lot of oil reserves. They're going to now control the higher GDP than NATO. They're already kind of on that line. There's already some people who say they actually do control more GDP than NATO. But either way, we have three options. We can stand alone. We can withdraw from NATO. We can stand alone, not join BRICS, just stand by ourselves. But then we have no allies, do we? We could side with Europe, but quite honestly, do you really feel like we should side with NATO? People that hate us, people who are doing the exact opposite of what we want. Yes, Democrats would love to side with NATO, but what is NATO these days? NATO is funding Ukraine, hiding all the dirty secrets of the quote unquote your Ukrainian businessmen, the organ harvesting, the trafficking, the drug deals, all of the other dirty secrets that go on, the pedophilia. That's what's happening in Ukraine. And the Europeans, they want to support that. European leaders, they support that. They support giving every last dollar we have to Ukraine to hide their dirty little secrets. That's all that's about. They, support the puppet government that's in Ukraine that hides the dirty little secrets. And and in the meantime, those people hate us. Okay, so I don't feel like they're an alliance to us. The UK, they're in line to be the next Islamic caliphate, and it's not about Muslims. Russia has a 15% population of Muslims, but they're not radicalized. That's the big difference. In Russia, you can practice any religion you want, and Islam is the second, the second highest religion in Russia, but there's no radicalization in Russia. The minute somebody becomes radicalized, guess what's happening? They end up in the gulag or worse. Here in the United States, we welcome radicalization, don't we? It's everywhere and it's spreading like wildfire. And that's what's happening in Europe. And even JD Vance made that comment not too long ago that the first Muslim country that launches a nuclear weapon is going to be over in Europe, probably the UK. I mean, that was a comment from him directly. And let's see, to catch up to some comments. Robert says, so what would the USA do if Japan, Germany, and Korea join BRICS, all export countries that need global markets? We should beat them to it. Robert, that's probably one of the best points anybody could make. And that will eventually happen. But that will eventually happen. And Jay says, not buying oil doesn't go against Russia. Selling their products inner would crush India. They get high tariffs and can't export to America. And Kevin says sanctions will only help the Russian government. They will become more self-reliant. That's exactly right. They welcome sanctions. Donald Trump knows that. They don't care about sanctions. And that's why I expect this deal I don't know if it's going to go through. We'll see. And Jay says, my fingers were not made for little buttons. I get you, Jay. Mine either sometimes. Russia gets, I'm not sure what you mean with radicals. They get rid of radicals. Putin has already said in Russia, if you commit a terror act, then we're not only going to take you out, but we're going to take out your entire family. He's been very public about making those statements. I'm not a Russian bot. It's not about that. It's about making the best alliance. What is the best alliance for us? Because we have to have allies. If we stand alone, we're going to be in a really tough spot and we're going to end up hurting ourselves. We have to have an alliance. And I don't think that alliance under Donald Trump is going to be NATO. Under Republican rule, it's not going to be NATO because they hate us. They absolutely hate us. They love Democrats because Democrats share the same values as our European leaders. However, Russia, believe it or not, has great values. People think, "Oh, Putin, he's a killer." How many people has the United States killed? How many people have the United States government killed? Quite a few people. We're responsible for a lot of deaths around the world, aren't we? Far more than Russia is. So I don't feel that we have the right to say that about Russia. Putin has never ruled under communism. He came in after communism ended. He has never ruled under communism. In fact, people say he's a very nice, generous guy. He just recently he gifted a guy in Alaska. There was a guy, and the way the story allegedly goes is that when he was in Alaska, there was a guy who was saying something about parts. He can't get parts for his Russian motorcycle because of sanctions. He's very upset about sanctions. He's like, I have a motorcycle. It doesn't run. I can't repair it because of these sanctions. I'm not allowed to order parts. Do you know that Putin gifted this man with a brand new motorcycle, Russian motorcycle I don't know how the company's called, Ural, Ural. And I saw photos of this guy taking a receipt of this motorcycle. They said they put it on rush delivery. This guy doesn't have to worry about parts anymore. He's got a brand new Russian motorcycle. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And I'll tell you, we're going to see how this all plays out today. I think that Donald Trump is very smart. I've always believed he's why he wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. He's great at making deals. We've seen him do it with 40 Wall Street. We've seen him do it at the Grand Hotel that he owns. We've seen him do it in the United States, of course, during his last term and during this term. That has not changed at all. I don't agree with everything he does, but most of what he does is right in line with what we need. And what this is about and why I think that we're probably going to see something work out here. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but I think something's going to work out. I think Donald Trump had to play the Russian leaders. He had to befriend them because he wants this deal. He wants them to agree to a ceasefire. He wants them to agree to ending this war. Why? Because we need, again, like I said last week, we need these deals with Russia. We want Russia to invest billions of dollars in the United States infrastructure. We want to work out deals with them over rare earth minerals in the Arctic region. And those are all things on the line. Jay says NATO has outlived its purpose. It's not even what was formed to be in the first place. Absolutely so. Robert, it's all central banking. You got that right. Jay says the American people will never support Russia as an ally. You're probably right, Jay. They probably won't. You know why? Operation Mockingbird. Because history has been rewritten. We've been told it through propaganda that Russia is our enemy. I honestly think that Europe is more of an enemy to us than Russia by far. And we know now how propaganda works. We know now how Operation Mockingbird worked and how they turned the media against us and they want you to believe a certain narrative. But we've got to be able to deprogram our brains, and that will never happen with a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans will never be able to deprogram. They're always going to believe what they were taught growing up in school, even though the history books back then were skewed, to share a narrative that's been happening. If you're alive and listening to this show, then that's been happening as long as any of us have been around. Everything you learned in school was written just like it's written today to serve a purpose, to share a certain narrative. And it's no different. Donna, Putin worked for the KGB, and how many people have worked for the CIA? I don't see the KGB to be a big deal, quite honestly, because how different is it than the FBI in the United States or the Department of Justice in the United States? We have these organizations here in our own country who are supposed to be for our protection when actually they're just harming American citizens. Look what the CIA has done to us as Americans. Look what they've done to people all around the world. And I think saying that Putin, and I'm not, this is not against you, Donna. It's just a common thing that people tell me. And Jay says Putin is not a nice man. I don't know, Jay. I think that's programming, making you think Putin's not a nice man. I've never seen anything happen that to me that makes me feel that Putin is not a nice guy. Donald Trump has said many times that he and Putin are friends, that they get along very well. I think he's a perfectly nice guy, but he's also a man who is on a mission to save his country and to do the best for his country. And that sometimes means putting people in prison. It sometimes means eh, going out and having these different secret operations and going out, and unfortunately war is part of that. I don't think that means he's not a nice person. I think it means that he cares about his country. He has to do what he has to do. There's, look at all the people who say Donald Trump's not a nice person, because they've been programmed to feel that way. We've been programmed to think that Putin's a really bad guy who worked for the KGB and has killed all these people and blah, blah, blah. And the fact is, he's no different than a lot of the people in our country who worked for the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Justice. No different at all. Doesn't make him a bad person. And other than that, we'll see what happens today. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Remember, well, first of all, let me remind you, the last time Zelensky was in Washington, D.C., he got kicked out. Do you remember that? Back then, I played the video where he had insulted J.D. Vance. Do you remember that? And he was muttering under his breath. I can't remember what it was. You guys might remember. He called J.D. Vance a name. I don't recall what that was. It was really bad. Was it the B word? I can't remember, but it was something. He was immediately removed from the White House, no procession out the door. They literally gave him a kick in the pants, stuffed him into his car, and off he went. And you know that he got a real beat down from European leaders because of the way that looked. And so today they're not taking any chances. European leaders coming over, in DC already, actually, with Zelensky. And I'm going to play that again because here they are coming in the door, heading into Washington, DC right now, down the White House. How can you not? And Donald Trump told him this time, you have to wear a suit. We have a formality in the White House, and that requires wearing a suit. Now, does Zelensky even own a suit? I mean, he's worth what, $66 billion, probably more than that now. Surely the man can go out and buy himself a suit. Come on now. We will see. I can't wait to see what he looks like in a suit, or will he even wear a suit at all? He's probably going to still have those same ridiculous clothes on because, oh, he's an actor. That's why, oh, he's an actor. Because when he comes to these different meetings, like at the White House, he's acting, he's playing a part. So he's got to wear his fatigues, right? His army green and brown because he's playing a part of an actor. He's nothing but a puppet, nothing but a puppet. And we know that what's happening today is really what's going to go down is they're all going to meet. And Europe, the European leaders, they're going to speak for Zelensky. That guy, he's as well, you know what? He's already done his speaking. So this is going to give you a good idea of where this is going to go. This is a statement that Zelensky just released. You can already see what his stance is.
Putin has been unable to take it for 12 years, and the constitution of Ukraine makes it impossible to give up territory or trade land. Since the territorial issue is so important, it should be discussed only by the leaders of Ukraine and Russia at the trilateral Ukraine, United States, Russia. So far, Russia gives no sign that trilateral will happen, and if Russia refuses, then new sanctions must follow.
Okay, so yes, Robert, he is an exotic a dancer. And I'll tell you what, I love it over on Threads because all these people are all, oh, Zelensky's a war hero. Zelensky's, he's this great man, blah, 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 blah. And, it's so easy to make fun of him because he was a comedian. We've got countless videos of him dancing in tutus and high heels and bondage wear and things like that. How can you not make fun of the guy? Seriously, how can you not make fun of the guy? And then people are just so incredibly misinformed. If you're listening to the show, and keep in mind, I have no idea who's listening to the show. Unless you're commenting on the comment line, I cannot see who listens or watches the show. I have no way to know. And there probably is a way to know. I just don't know how to do it. And so therefore, if you are listening to this show and you're not somebody who speaks up or comments and you want to learn more about what's really going on in Ukraine and how they actually do support white supremacy, how they do support Nazism, go and watch the movie Ukraine on Fire. You will learn, not only will you learn, it'll be a great education for you. You will learn why Russia invaded Ukraine. You'll learn all about Ukraine and how Zelensky came into power and how all of his opponents were jailed, how they became a puppet regime, about all the little dirty secrets that take place in Russia. The movie, of course, produced by Oliver Stone. And it is a really good movie. It's really very telling in what's happening over there. And I really think every single person should see it before you can form a true opinion on what's going on over there in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. Now, today, of course, Donald Trump wants this deal to be done. He wants peace. He wants to move on from this. He wants Russia to invest in our infrastructure. There's thousands of deals to be made for the United States. It is in our best interest to side with Russia. Russia, of course, they want to keep the land they've already taken. We all know this by now. They want wherever they are today, and every day it changes because they make progress every single day. Wherever they are today, wherever those lines are, that's the land they want to keep. Putin has made that very clear. Donald Trump has made it very clear that he's perfectly fine with that on his end. But he's also said it's not up to him. It's up to Europe. Now, Donald Trump never said it's up to Zelensky. He said it's up to Europe because Europe is pulling the strings. That's why they're there today. They're going to advise what they want. Now, Putin has said that he is perfectly fine. He doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO, but he's perfectly fine if we allow certain security measures to take place to protect Ukraine. He's perfectly fine with that because you know what? He wants to take the region that he's liberated. Okay. He liberated these people. These people were being held hostage by people like the Azov battalion. If you don't believe me, watch Ukraine on Fire. You will see it all, like the town of Mariupol, where the Azov battalion, they dug a trench all the way around the town and would not let the people leave. And if a Russian speaking person, which Mariupol is largely, of course, Russian, those people that own businesses, well, they got their fee like mafia. They would come in, they would take their fee, they'd take food, drinks, whatever they wanted for free. And the people had no choice. They couldn't leave. There was nothing more they could do. And so they were liberated. And people want to say, oh, Russia kidnapped all these kids. No. What they did is they took the children of the Russian people that were living in Ukraine and they bust them back to Russia for their own safety. And those children have been released to their parents. Parents that didn't survive. I'm not sure what Russia has done with those children, but they never kidnapped any children. Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Jason. And let's see here. Jay says if he would let Ukraine have an election, he wouldn't be in charge. You're right, Jay. They would vote him out, but of course, and it's not Zelensky that won't have them have an election. It's Europe. Europe is controlling Zelensky. Donna says Ukraine on Fire. Is that what you said? Yes, Donna. It's called Ukraine on Fire. You can watch it on YouTube, and it's made by Oliver Stone, produced by Oliver Stone. And again, I recommend every single person watch it. If you want to understand what's really going on in Ukraine before this historic deal goes down, this will give you a much better idea of what's taking place over there and what the Europeans are trying to protect. Now, the way things stand is Zelensky says our Constitution, as you heard in the video, doesn't allow us to give away any land. Now, I don't think it's going to matter in the end what their Constitution is. I think this is going to come down to Europe and Donald Trump. European leaders and Donald Trump are going to talk. Donald Trump is going to say, you know what? We are not helping anymore. We are not giving any more money to Ukraine. And I don't care what you think or what you say. I'm just saying it right now, not to be offensive to anyone, that Ukraine cannot survive without the help of the United States. Europe has already practically bankrupted themselves supporting Ukraine, again, in an effort to contain their dirty little secrets that took place over there in Ukraine. And so therefore they have nothing left to give. They have nothing left to give. What do we have? Germans worried about they're not even going to have power. They're going to be heating their stoves and cooking over wood. That's been happening for several years now, that threat of Germans having to do that because their government has given everything away. There's nothing left to give. So without the United States, they know Ukraine cannot survive. And I think Donald Trump has had enough. He wants these deals to be made with Russia, and that's kind of the end of the story. So we'll see what happens from here. Of course, Zelensky said that he wants the line before he can even consider all of the different points of what Putin wants. He wants a ceasefire because he knows that while they mediate, while they work out this deal, that Russia is gaining ground very quickly. So he wants the lines drawn today. Then he wants a couple days to think about it. And then they're going to make a decision. So I don't know that we're going to have a lot of answers today, but we will see how that all plays out. It'll be very interesting to follow and see what happens. Again, if it were me, and I'm sorry if you don't like me because I say this, or if you don't understand how I feel, NATO is not our friend. Again, NATO is not our friend. European leaders are not our friends. And yes, people will tell me, well, there's a lot of different countries in NATO, and some of those people are your friends. Are they? I would like to know which ones. Turkey is one of the biggest sponsors of terrorism in the world. They're part of NATO, but they also kind of go back and forth with BRICS. They've thought about leaving NATO and joining BRICS. And I wish they would, quite honestly, because maybe we would straighten them out a little bit. We either stand alone or we join BRICS. NATO has nothing to offer us. They're just going to take us down the hole a lot further. They have lost their countries to Islam. I mean, there's no coming back from what's going on over in Europe. So, of course, Democrats want to go to that direction. Not me, and I'm sorry for saying so, but if it were me and I was Donald Trump and I had to choose a choice of either joining NATO or BRICS, I would definitely side with BRICS, because I'll tell you what, between China, Russia, India, some of these other countries, they're going to be a very powerful, powerful force, far more powerful, of course, than Europe will ever be, because Europe has nothing left. They've got nothing left. And oh, thank you, Robert, is sharing the link to Ukraine on Fire to Donna. Everyone should watch it. Follow that link if you can see it there. Otherwise, look it up on YouTube. All right. Well, so we'll see how that plays out. We'll talk about that tomorrow, because we're all going to be making fun of Zelensky tomorrow. He's going to do something dumb. He's not going to be able to contain himself. He's going to be making weird faces. We're going to be making it. Well, hopefully he wears a nice suit. The guy certainly can't afford it. Your tax dollars paid for it. So let's hope he uses your tax dollars to buy himself a nice suit. But I want to play this video. David brought up this video from Comey. So I'm going to sidetrack over here to Comey and take a look at this. This is the strangest video I think I've ever seen. After we talk about this video, I'm going to talk about Larry Fink of BlackRock taking over the WEF and what Donald Trump is doing. This is kind of crazy, because I just made a post last night about this and about how we don't yet have legislature to deal with these homes that BlackRock is buying. That's getting ready to change. Donald Trump always a step ahead. So let's take a look at this Comey video, because this is so weird.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my Substack. Last week's cold turns out to have been COVID, quite a flashback. And Donald Trump is still president and still humiliating America on a national stage, standing next to Vladimir Putin. It's like a dream, a bad dream you can't wake up from. But I don't want to talk about that bad dream this week. I want to talk about a truly inspirational public figure named Taylor Swift. Of course, I watched her podcast interview with the Kelsey brothers. Of course, I watched the whole thing, although on YouTube, Patrice and I got kicked off for the last 15 minutes and finished it on her phone. But I watched it. You see, Taylor Swift and I go way back. I went to my first concert of hers 15 years ago. I've been to a second, and I have helped financially support the attendance of a lot of family members at others. I'm in a family's Swiftie group chat. I know all her music, and I listen to it in my headphones when I cut the grass. So yes, I have a favorite of hers, although honestly for me it's a tie between All Too Well, 10-minute version, and Exile featuring Bon Iver. Taylor Swift has grown up with my family.
Okay, so I'm not playing that whole video. It's like 5 minutes long. I can't listen to that guy for 5 minutes without losing my mind. But you can go out there and see the entire video. I will post it, as a matter of fact. I'll try to post it to Facebook. I don't know if they'll let me, because they love Comey over there. Jay says, and this guy was in charge. Robert says, traitor Comey. Oh my goodness. Yes, it's real, Mandy. It is absolutely for real. Kimberly over on YouTube, freaking weirdo. Yes, he is. I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? If somebody told me that Comey was an alien today, I would probably be like, I get it. I totally get it. What in the world is going on with this guy? He's like zoned out. I do not understand it. I guess he wants to brag about his family relationship with Taylor Swift music. It's so strange. You got to see the entire video again. It's about 5 minutes long, way too long for us to play. But it is so weird. This guy is not doing himself any service at all by releasing this type of content for the world to see. And Mandy, I had to double check it because I thought it was AI. I'm like, this has to be AI. Like, if somebody could program something in AI for what making Comey look stupid, this is what they would do. But it's actually real. He has some kind of a podcast, and he calls it something else. He doesn't call it a podcast, but he calls it. I don't remember what the word was that he calls it, but it was really weird. And it is real. It's not AI. I double checked. I double checked. So there is some breaking news. Kind of funny that we just talked about it. Zelensky is not wearing a suit. Even though he was required by the White House to wear a suit, he is not wearing a suit. I kind of saw a little bit of photo. It looks like he's wearing a t-shirt, his usual, actor fatigues. No surprise there. We'll see how that works. He's probably going to get kicked out once again today. The nerve of this guy, the nerve of him to come to the United States to meet with our president and wear a t-shirt, to wear fatigues. Every leader, even even the worst of the worst. I mean, seriously, the worst of the worst. When they meet with a dignitary, they put a suit on. You see over in Syria, right? I can't remember the new name of Al Qaeda, HTS, Al Qaeda, but the people who are running Syria right now, they literally are Al Qaeda. But I'll tell you what, they sure clean up well, don't they? They shave their beards, they trim them down, they put on a suit, they meet with world leaders because even though they burn people alive in cages, they still put a suit on to meet dignitaries. But not Zelensky. Nope, not him, because he's got an image to portray. And Donna says, you cannot tell me what to do. Kevin says, I'm surprised he's not wearing a Sumner jumpsuit. Oh my God, that's so funny. I'm sorry. Yeah, I could say he probably wears Adidas tracksuits in his personal time, I'm sure, because we know it's all just a joke. Something else I saw that came out that was breaking news. And let me see. I don't know if I can find it now. I had it. I had it. I don't know if I can find it. Oh, yeah, here we go. MSNBC has rebranded because God knows nobody's listening to MSNBC anymore. Now they're called MS Now. So very interesting. That is the latest news, breaking news. MS Now. And of course, Thune wants to censure Schiff. Nothing new there. And so we'll see what Zelensky looks like when the show's over. I can't wait to take a look. I'm going to see how all of those events play out today. I think we already know how that's all going to go. But more than anything, I'm looking forward to seeing how stupid he looks and how stupid he acts. And if he gets kicked out again, I would love for Trump to kick him out just so we can all get a little laugh out of it. We'll see how that works. But in the meantime, the most disturbing news I've heard in a very long time is that Larry Fink of BlackRock has taken over at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, who we know is behind so many things that happen here in our country, behind the high crime rates, behind the violence at some of our protests. We know they're trying to take over the United States, community by community. Uh, Now, WF was always kind of behind some of the funding of the takeover of America, no question about it. But a lot of people didn't realize that Charles Schwab was under investigation by the WEF. And so, therefore, he's been removed. Now, he was found not to be in default through that investigation, but either way, he's out. Larry Fink is in. BlackRock, they've purchased, I think I just read 274,000 houses in the United States. Let me make sure. 274,000 houses is what Blackstone has purchased. And we all know, and I'll tell you what, you see those ads out there that'll say, hey, we'll pay you cash. We'll pay you 20% more than what any other offer you receive. Well, that's BlackRock and companies that are subsidiaries of BlackRock. BlackRock owns many other companies too, and they do their bidding for them in a lot of times, but it all comes down to BlackRock and the funding that BlackRock has, of course, under the direction of Larry Fink. And Mandy says, that is not good. No, it is absolutely not good. Absolutely not good. And Dottie, yes, the WEF investigated themselves. Pretty funny, isn't it? So think about this. BlackRock spent $1 trillion, $1 trillion buying these 274,000 homes. And it's all about, we know what it's about, don't we? They want you to own nothing. They don't want you to have a home. That's what it is. And I've seen this happen in smaller ways. To relate a story, my family used to have a cabin out in Missouri near Ironton, and these people bought the lake and they bought the woods surrounding the lake. And then every time a property would go up for sale, they would buy it. Now, obviously, their goal, in my opinion, is to buy as much land as they can so they can take over that entire community. Now, then they will probably sell it to a larger developer who will develop it into probably multi-million dollar homes, potentially on this beautiful lake. Or, they're going to buy it all and have it for themselves, whatever, or they're going to rent out these properties and make a lot of money on rentals. I don't know what their end goal is. We sold and got out, not because of that, but we sold and got out. But I know that's what their goal was. And BlackRock on a larger scale is exactly the same thing. They're buying homes in your community, and I'll tell you what they're doing. And we've talked about this over the years. It's nothing new. They're putting these houses up for rent. They'll buy a house, they'll come in, they'll have a local real estate agent, of course, handle the transaction. They pay in cash. They will pay again about 20% over what you're asking for or what your highest bidder is. And then what they will, or your highest offer, I should say, then they'll put that house out there for rent and they'll let it sit there for rent for about 6 months or more. And during that time, they're collecting $100, $150 per application fee. And just remember, if you are, let's say, a household of two, you and your husband and wife, whatever the situation might be, you're going to pay two application fees. And if you have an adult child that lives with you that's over 18, they also have to pay a separate application fee. So there's hundreds of dollars potentially coming in per family that fills out an application for the rental. They're making far more money on rental applications than they ever would on the actual rent of these properties. So they let them sit for a really long time, and then eventually they will rent them out. But again, it comes back to, they want to take away the idea of home ownership from you. They're buying entire communities of houses. It's absolutely terrifying. Dottie says, bought complete tracts in Texas. Yes. And up until now, nobody is stopping them. Absolutely nobody is stopping them. And Jay says, the house beside me sold to a company in Florida. They are turning it into an Airbnb. Yes. And another big thing that I think needs to be regulated, Mandy said, is happening all around me, more rentals than ever. And you're right, the houses do sit for a year or more. They do, because they make more money in these rental application fees than they ever will in just renting the houses out. And that is their goal. They're just bringing in billions of dollars. And, they're bringing in so much money in these rental application fees that it really funds them buying their next house, quite honestly. It's insane. And there's no house that's off limits for them. They buy little houses, they buy big houses. Every single time a house comes up for sale, they buy it. And it's killing the real estate market, quite honestly, killing the real estate market, because I know real estate agents personally who tell me that, what, yes, I would love to have the sale, but I don't want to do that, for personal reasons. I do not want to work with these people. There's some real estate companies, brokers who will not work with these BlackRock type companies. They will not work with them because they understand what they're doing. They don't want them to take over the community. A lot of citizens have found out who these different real estate agents are who do handle these transactions, and have really spoken out against them and spoken out against the brokers who take on these clients. But then there's also real estate agents, I've known a couple of them too, who say, what? It's a tough world out there in real estate, and I've got to take what I can get. And they're willing to come in and pay me my fee, and they're paying 20% over, they're going to make sure they get this house. Who am I to stand in their way? Which I really hate to hear, because you are that person who should stand in their way. But yeah, they're going to get the house either way. They're going to find to get it either way. And I've even heard homeowners who say, I won't sell to that type of company. I would rather go to a family. The house I live in now, quite honestly, Whenever I first came across it, the woman who lived here, she was an attorney, just a super, nice person. She made everybody write a letter to her telling her who you are and why this home is a good fit for you, and I feel so privileged that she chose my letter and chose this offer, and we were able to buy the home above, somebody like BlackRock. And very privileged for that. And I love it that some homeowners, even though they know they can get more money from these BlackRock companies, saying, nope, not going to do it. But we all know where these houses are. We all know what's going on. Jay says, when we sold my brother's house, our real estate agent asked if we would sell or preferred not to sell to a company like that. Well, Jay, I'm glad they're asking. I'm very glad they're asking because these people, they're piranhas. They're out there everywhere. And, just yesterday, I made a post about this I think it was on Facebook, where I said, here we go, BlackRock taking over the WEF. Now we know where we're heading because they're going to become more powerful. They're going to become a lot stronger, and particularly under Democrat leadership. And when I made that post, I said, right now, there's nothing in place to stop these people. The Trump administration isn't doing anything to stop the sale of these homes to these big corporations. And we've largely left it up to, our local attorney generals or our governor. And I know in the state of Missouri, it has been addressed back, by Governor Parson back in the day. It's been addressed back then by Eric Schmidt, and hopefully, I believe, by Andrew Bailey. So Missouri, is doing their best to control what's taking place, but the sales are still happening in Missouri. If you live in St. Charles County, guess what? Almost all those houses around you that are up for rent are all owned by companies like BlackRock. You'll see, I'm not going to say the names. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but you'll see certain names pop up continuously. And you'll see, because I investigated this in a big way back when I was on a couple of other different shows. So it's a big deal. But Donald Trump has it under wraps. I woke up this morning, I always wake up in the morning to see what happened overnight. I get a lot of the news compiled by the night before when I go to bed, but every single morning I'm like, well, what new is going on? Because a lot breaks overnight. And one of the things, the first thing I saw this morning was about Donald Trump, the Trump administration saying, you know what? We are here to protect Americans. We're going to investigate who is buying these houses. They buy in cash. So now we're going to have a plan in place. I don't know how long it's going to take to become effective, where we're going to find out who is buying these houses. Real estate agents are going to have to report. And now, who is buying these houses? It's not going to be as easy as, oh, it's anonymous cash buyer. There is going to be no more anonymity. We're going to know who is purchasing these houses. And then once the Trump administration finds out who it is that's purchasing all of these homes with cash, then they're going to deal with it at that time. That's the gist of the story. Of course, there's a lot of legal jargon and terminology they used to make that statement, but that's what it comes down to. If you're buying a house with cash anonymously, we're going to find out who you are. We're going to compile that data. Real estate agencies are going to be sending in that data. It's going to be reported on a certain system. And then what's going to happen is the Trump administration is going to go through that data. They're going to say, okay, it's BlackRock buying 90% of the houses, in these cash sales. And one of their subsidiaries is buying 5%, another subsidiary, buying 5%. Or maybe it's China, or maybe a foreign government, is got a little wedge in there where they're buying homes with cash. But either way, we're finally going to know. We're finally going to have that proof that all these anonymous buyers, because even though we know BlackRock has purchased 274,000 homes with $1 trillion, we know it's so much more than that. When I read that number, I'm like, there is no way that that's correct. There, maybe 274,000 houses in a month, maybe in 6 months, maybe a year, but there is no way that's the total number of houses they've bought. When you see them buying hundreds of houses in one big swoop, in certain communities. And I'm so glad to hear that Donald Trump is on the bandwagon. Every time I think to myself, gosh, we don't have an answer for this. We do. We actually do have an answer for that. And this is one of those things we do have an answer for. So I was very, very happy to hear that. And again, just another thing that we're going to see play out, another great feat of the Trump administration. Very excited about it. Now, the other thing that we're going to be tackling is mail-in ballots. We'll talk more about this, of course, in the coming days, weeks. Donald Trump wants to make sure that he protects us because Putin made that statement. Remember when Putin was in town about mail-in ballots, he told Donald Trump, "Hey, Donald Trump, the reason why they cheat in elections, how they cheat, is they use mail-in ballots." And then Trump, of course, that big light bulb goes off. He's like, "I'm going to do something about that." Not that he wasn't already trying to do something about it, but I think the fact that even a world leader like Putin is like, they're cheating through these mail-in ballots, wink, wink, you better do something about it. So Donald Trump has vowed that we will end mail-in ballots. Now, we'll see if that happens by 2028. I think it will, but he has vowed that we will end mail-in ballots. And we've all said from day one, all of us have said, we know they're cheating with mail-in ballots. I just read a story this morning. There was a guy, I don't even recall where he was, but he is a radical Muslim, radical Islamic who is had an election somewhere here in the United States. He was caught at the ballot box putting in a big package. Nobody knew what it was, and then it turns out it was like numerous ballots that this guy put into the ballot box, and it turns out he only won by 76 votes. So I'm sure he probably put 80 in, and that's the 80 that took him over the line. Because when it comes to mail-in ballots, we can't track them. We really have no idea, and especially now in a world where these young folks don't even have a signature. All they can do is print. They have no idea how to sign a cursive signature. There's no way to know who people are anymore. And that's a really scary situation. And of course, done with intent, which ended up hurting Democrats in the last election. Because in the last election, at least in some areas, if they pulled out a mail in ballot or any ballot for that matter, and it was a printed signature and not a signed signature, they put the vote aside and they didn't count it. I don't think that Democrats meant for that to happen, but that is exactly what happened. And their trick kind of turned on themselves, didn't it? We know they don't want people to be able to read or write in cursive. And so therefore, we're going to see a lot of printed signatures in future elections, of course. But that's one thing Donald Trump wants to end. He also wants to tackle the issue of the voting machines, the electronic voting machines, another thing he would like to eliminate and get some type of control on. Hopefully that happens. Hopefully it happens. The last thing I really wanted to get into before we head out, I know I'm way over time because I started a few minutes late, is that it is the weather. I know most of you are dying in this heat. We definitely need some rain. I'm ready to go out and do a rain dance. But I read this morning, we need to keep an eye on this because we know, God knows, in this past year, we were just battered with weather and these crazy weather storms and rivers. What do they call that in California? They have this new storm system. I can't remember what it's called, like a river or something or another downpour. I'm like, where did that come from? And we saw what happened with Helene. Just think about it. It's almost a year anniversary from when Helene came through and the devastation that occurred. We just had all this devastation, of course, in Texas off the Guadalupe River from flash flooding. Dottie, I think it happened by your house, happening everywhere. And I'll tell you what, now we have Hurricane Erin, who continues to strengthen. And I read this morning that the path is changing. We're already worried about storm surge, and now it's heading a little bit more west. I still don't see or have heard that it's going to make impact with the United States. Of course, it's done a lot of devastation in Puerto Rico, but we are facing record storm surge in some areas, is what I'm hearing. And I hope people are prepared. Hurricanes, they can change trajectory, and it sounds like that's what's happening here. So please say some prayers for some folks on the East Coast who are definitely going to have to be worried about some storm surge coming through. And we'll, of course, have more. Thank you so much, Jay. Atmospheric river. I just could not find the right term for that. Never have I heard of atmospheric river. And then all of a sudden, remember all these downpours that happened in parts of California. And whoever heard of flooding in California, in Los Angeles or Los Angeles County or Orange County. And then all of a sudden we have atmospheric rivers coming into play. The world, I keep thinking that everything's just so crazy. Our weather's crazy. Here where I live, all these storms pop up, but they dissipate before they get here. And it's so dry here. As a matter of fact, as soon as we're done with the show, I'm heading out to the garden and I'm just gonna set up my sprinkler today and just let it go because it is so dry, so humid. And I know things are going to be cooling off, of course, this week. But I mean, look at everything else going on. Brain-eating amoeba in Lake of the Ozarks. We talked about that the other day. Screwworms coming down from Mexico threatening our livestock. And if you read about the screwworms, boy, that's horrific. It's just a horrific situation that's taking place. And it's just going to be devastating to the livestock of the very, ranchers and farmers. It's a big, big situation taking place. And of course, we have the flesh-eating bacteria, along the Florida coastline, all kinds of different diseases coming out. And it's weird. There's weird stuff going on. I've never recalled a time where we had so much going on all at once. It's pretty strange stuff. And Jay says climate change, fear mongering, make up the new terms. That's exactly what it is, Jay. Oh, it's an atmospheric river because people are eating beef. All this flooding's happening because people are eating beef. So ridiculous. All right, guys. Well, that's it for me today. We'll have so much more tomorrow. I will look forward to talking to you all then. I have to work in Columbia, Missouri tomorrow, but not until after the show. So as soon as I get done with the show tomorrow, I will be heading out. But I do hope you guys have a really great day. I will look forward to talking to you then. And I'm going to play that little clip again on our way out because we just got to see it one more time. Have a good day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.